guys, I'm Cameron and welcome back to my channel where we sip tea and also spill the tea as I talk about some of my favorite reads. So guys, I am a little nervous and excited because today we are going to be doing a video that I've never done before, and honestly I've just never had the backbone to film this video, and that is because today we are going to be doing a book unhaul. So guys, I'm the type of person where I just do not like to get rid of any of my books. Even if I didn't really like the book necessarily, I will still find reasons to hold on to it because I just don't like to get rid of my books. But you know what guys, I just felt like today is the day and I have to just put on my big girl pants and get rid of these books because these are books that I'm never going to read, and I just feel like they all deserve to go to somebody who will love them. So guys, without further ado, let's get into this unhaul. So the first book that I'm going to be getting rid of is The Queen's Rising by Rebecca Ross. So this book is a YA fantasy series, and when I first got this book, I was really excited for it because I thought that it was going to have more romance, but whenever I started to read it, I just realized that the romance was very much part of the subplot and the fantasy and everything that was going on in this book, the adventure, everything like that. That was the major plotline of the story. And guys, I enjoyed this book enough to read it and to finish it, but I just didn't enjoy it enough to continue on with the series. So I think for that reason, I am going to be getting rid of this book. The next book is Dark Star by Bethany Frannette. So I think that this is a type of superhero, Gotham-like book, and I got this whenever superheroes were all the rage. I was watching like The Flash and The Arrow on the CW, and I loved those series, those TV series, so I thought that I would love this. But honestly guys, I got this book like years ago and it has just remained untouched, so I'm getting rid of this one. The next book on this list is Decked with Holly by Marnie Bates. So this is a YA romance, and this is actually a book that I really loved whenever I first read it. You know, it's set obviously during the Christmas time, and it's about this rock star who has to have a fake relationship with the main girl in our story, and obviously they end up liking each other and things go from being a fake relationship to a real relationship. And guys, this book was so much fun. It was so amazing. But ever since I got this book like years ago, I have not read it since, and I just feel like this book deserves to go to somebody who will love it and read it and just enjoy it as much as I did. The next book that we have on here is Even the Darkest Stars by Heather Fawcett. So this is actually a book that I got in a blind date with a book. So I ordered this book online not knowing what in the world I was going to get. I told this girl that I love romance and fantasy, and she ended up sending me this book. I read the back of it and it sounded like it would be interesting, but honestly it just did not seem like there was going to be that much romance in it at all. And ever since I got it, I've not read it, so I just think that it's time to let this book go. Next on our list is Heart of the Fae by Emma Hamm. So this book, I was really just kind of upset whenever I read this book because I was really excited going into this, and especially whenever I saw this cover. You know, this is such a gorgeous cover. I thought that it was going to be an amazing book and I was absolutely going to adore it. But honestly guys, I just feel like the romance in this story just missed its mark on me. It just felt kind of insta-lusty, insta-love, and I don't necessarily like that. I love a slow burn, and this was definitely not a slow burn. So yeah, I'm going to be getting rid of this book. Our next book is Rapsodic by Laura Talisa. So this is actually a book that I read, and you know, I didn't hate it, but I also didn't really love it. I do have to say that while I did read this book, I also listened to the audiobook as well, and I just feel like the audiobook does such a better job at making the story come to life. So I know that if I ever decide to read this book again, that I would definitely be checking out the audiobook. So that is why I'm getting rid of this book. This is not a bad book whatsoever. I enjoyed it when I read it, but it's just not my favorite. So yeah. Okay, so the other book that I have here is another book by Laura Talisa, and that is The Unearthly. So the other book, Rapsodic, that was a new adult romance, paranormal romance, and this book is a YA paranormal romance, and this was actually Laura Talisa's first book that she ever wrote, I believe, or it's one of her first books. And guys, I just think that you can really tell that this is her first book. I just did not enjoy the story. I felt like the characters were very one-dimensional. The romance was terrible, and the plot line was just very basic, and it was very predictable. So I just did not really enjoy this book. So that is why I am going to be getting rid of it. So yeah. The next book that I'm going to be getting rid of is Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi. So this is actually a book that I actually decided to read years after people were talking and raging about it. You know, I pretty much missed the whole period whenever this book was literally all that you ever heard anyone talk about on BookTube or on Goodreads. But you know what, guys, you know, I just heard such amazing things about this book that I decided to pick it up and read it. And, you know, I thought that this book was very interesting. I liked it enough to continue on with the next book in the series. But you know what, guys, I just don't like it enough to keep it on my shelf. And I also just don't really like the fact that I feel like our main girl is so emotionally dependent on all the men in her life. And I know that she had like a hard background, obviously, and she has some struggles that she has to face, but I just didn't really like that about her, and it didn't really win. She just didn't really win me over with her personality. So yeah, that is why I'm getting rid of Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi. Okay, our next book is Kingdom of Exiles by Maxim M. Martineau. So this book reminds me so much of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by J.K. Rowling, the movie. And that's because this girl, she is somebody who she can talk and communicate and form connections with different supernatural beasts, and she helps to catch them and tame them. And she has this little bestiary thing like in her locket where she can open it up and keep her beasts in her locket. And so this book is basically about her as she goes on this adventure with this assassin, and she's trying to go and hunt down different beasts to give to the assassin so that he decides to spare her life because there is currently a hit on her head. So guys, this book, you know, I was so excited whenever I first started to read it. It really drew me in, but as the story went along, I just started to get really bored with this story. I feel like this book wasn't bad whatsoever, but there was just a lot of insta love in this book that I did not like. So that is why I'm getting rid of Kingdom of Exiles by Maxim M. Martineau. The next two books on my list is the first two books in the series of Caravelle by Stephanie Garber. So I have the first book, and obviously, like I said before, I have the second book called Legendary. And guys, this is a book that whenever I started to read this book, I was really enjoying it. But as I started to get further into the series, my interest just started to wane, and it just, over time, got very boring in my opinion, and it actually caused me to have a bit of a book slump. But as I was reading this book, and you know, at the very beginning, whenever I was reading this and I was very excited about it, I decided to pick up the Legendary, the second book in the series, which is Legendary, because I just thought that this was going to be a huge hit and that I was going to immediately want to read the second book in the series. I shouldn't have done that, because instead of it being a hit, it ended up being a very big miss for me. So now I have 2 books in my collection that just has to go. So that is Caravelle and Legendary by Stephanie Garber. The next book that I'm going to be getting rid of is Winter Spell by Claire Legrand. So this is actually a retelling of The Nutcracker, and I got this book years ago because, first of all, this cover is just gorgeous and I thought it was so beautiful. I wanted it in my library, but you know, this is just the type of book where I got it, I was really excited about it. It sounded really good, but honestly, it has been years and I have not read this book, and every time I think about getting rid of this book, I always tell myself like, no, I'll read it at this time. And yeah, guys, I just have done this so many times, and I just think that it's finally time to get rid of this book. And if I ever do decide to read this, I think I will just listen to it on audio. So yeah, that is Winter Spell by Claire Legrand. The next book that I'm getting rid of is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. So I actually just decided to read this book about a couple weeks ago. It was right after the time that I read Caravelle, and you know, guys, I was already in a bit of a book slump, so I thought that this book would definitely get me out of it, because I've heard so many great fantastic things about this series. So I definitely thought that I was going to love this, but guys, I just ended up not really liking this book. You know, honestly, there was nothing wrong with this book whatsoever. I was actually listening to it on audio as I was reading it, and I feel like the audiobook does such a fantastic job at really setting the scene and the atmosphere for this series. But honestly, there was just something about this book that was not hitting the mark for me. There was nothing wrong with this book, but I just feel like this series is just not meant for me, and I think this book would be so much better in somebody else's hands. And if I ever do decide to read this and to finish this book, I will definitely listen to it on audio. So yeah, that is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. The next books that I'm going to be talking about is 2 books by the author of Naomi Novik, and that is Uprooted and A Deadly Education. So Uprooted is actually a book that I mentioned in one of my previous videos, where I talked about popular books that I do not like. And obviously, guys, like that title says, I just did not really like this book at all. I tried to read this, but I just felt like the relationship that was being created in this book series, it was not something that I liked whatsoever. It was very toxic, and it was very much an enemies to lovers, but I felt like this enemies to lovers was just an unhealthy type of romance, and I just did not like that, and I couldn't continue on with this book simply because of that reason. So that is why I'm getting rid of Uprooted. So I thought after reading that I would try to give A Deadly Education a chance. You know, first of all, this cover is just like, it's really cool and very mysterious looking, and then I read like the back of this book, and it sounded very interesting. You know, it sounded like a really cool, more like gothic version of Harry Potter. So I was very excited about reading this book, but honestly, guys, I just did not like this book whatsoever. I felt like while this book had really great world building, it was just so slow, and I felt like the author spent so long talking about certain scenes and prolonging scenes in this book. And you know what, guys, it was just too much for me. It took too long. This book was just very boring for me, and the romance, what am I even saying? There was no romance in this book. If you like romance, don't read this book, because the romance, it's not even there. There is barely any romance at all. So yeah, I am very happy to be getting rid of these 2 books. You know, I'm proud of myself because I gave this author a really good go of it. You know, I've heard so many great things about her and about her books that she writes, but guys, I just do not vibe well with her books. I just don't really like her writing. So that is why I'm definitely going to be getting rid of this series, or those 2 books. Ugh, guys, my throat is already starting to hurt. Okay. The next 2 books that I'm going to be getting rid of is by the same author of Marissa Mayer, and that is Heartless by, you guessed it, Marissa Mayer, and also Renegades. So honestly guys, Heartless is a book, like, it looks so good to me. The cover is beautiful and it actually sounds really, really interesting, but I've had this book for so long. I've had it on my shelf for years and I keep telling myself that I'm going to read it, and at this point I just think that I've had it for too long. I really don't think I'm going to read this, but if I do decide to read it and to give it a go, I just honestly think that I'm going to listen to it on audio. So that is why I'm getting rid of this one. Now the other book that I'm talking about here is Renegades, and honestly guys, I really thought that I was going to like this book. I thought that it was going to be very, very fun, but you know guys, this is about superheroes, and I have just learned over time after reading different superhero and villain books that I just don't really like superheroes. That's just not my thing. You know, some people like to read about superheroes, but that's just not me. And honestly guys, the romance in this book, I did not vibe well with it. I didn't gel well with this romance. I thought that it was really annoying at times, and I just did not think that the romance was done well in this book whatsoever. So that is another big reason as to why I did not particularly like this book. So yeah, that is why I am going to be parting with these. Ooh, I had that backwards, oops, but that is why I'm going to be parting with these 2 books. Okay guys, so the next book that I'm going to be parting with is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. So this book, guys, I thought whenever I got this book that I was going to absolutely love it, because you know, it's about the main girl. She is a villain and she is basically going to this kingdom to make this king fall in love with her, and her whole plan is to get married with him and then to kill him and take his throne. But obviously guys, there starts to be a romance between them and she starts to like him, and her plan starts to get messed up from there. So guys, just from that synopsis, I thought that this book was going to be such a ride. I thought it was going to be so much fun, because I am somebody who, while I don't really like superheroes, I love reading about villains. There's just something about bad guys and bad girls that they are just fun to read about. I absolutely adore it, and I love a good villain redemptive type of story. But guys, this book was just, it was god awful. I can't say anything good about this book at all. The characters were so one-dimensional. It was unreal, and the plot line was so predictable, and I just did not like this book at all. So that is why I'm definitely happily getting rid of this book. Okay, alright guys, next book on this list is Praying for Rain by B.B. Easton. So guys, this cover is absolutely gorgeous, and this is one of the main reasons why I got this, because the cover art is just, it's so pretty, you know what I mean? It's so beautiful. So this is basically just a book that's about, it's set in a apocalyptic world, and I believe there's like a plague going around that's making people sick. I don't really remember, and that's because this book just was not memorable whatsoever. Guys, this romance here was so annoying. It was so annoying. I did not like it. There was definitely a lot of insta romance here, and as you can tell from a lot of these books that I'm talking about, I do not like insta romance. It's just not my thing, and so that is why I'm going to be getting rid of this book, because while it is an apocalyptic story, the romance was the main thing in this story. And you know, if you're going to be focusing on the romance, I feel like the romance has to be great. It has to be pretty dang good. But the author definitely missed the mark in this one, so that is why I am sending it away. The next two books that I'm going to be talking to you about are two books that are by the same author named Jessica Hawkins, and that is Something in the Way by Jessica Hawkins and Come Undone. And guys, I just have to say that both of these books, there was nothing really wrong with these books. Like, I read them both entirely. It wasn't bad, but honestly guys, you know, this author, she does straight romance, and like I was saying before, if you're going to be making a romance book, then the romance has to be freaking amazing. The characters have to be very well done. And I just feel like while this author didn't do anything wrong, I just feel like for some reason I have a hard time connecting to her writing and connecting to the characters that she creates. So that is why I am letting these two books go. The next two books that I'm going to be talking about is two books by the same author again, and these two books are Monster in His Eyes and Sempre. So this author, she mainly writes dark romance, and I am somebody who I love dark romance. In fact, I need to pick up another dark romance book. But you know guys, I feel like with dark romance, they are either a hit or a miss, and these books, while they were not terrible, and I do have to say, this author, she is so quotable. I love how she writes. Like, she just has a beautiful way of writing that it just looks more like a work of art than an actual work of fiction. But guys, while she does write beautifully, I just do not really like her books, if that makes any sense. I just have a hard time connecting to it, and these are just two books that it's gonna be easy for me to get rid of them because I just did not connect with them well in the first place. So that is Monster in His Eyes and Sempre. Okay, the next book that I'm letting go of is Stay With Me by Nicole Fiorina. Anyways, guys, I thought that this book was going to be absolutely amazing, but honestly, guys, this book really reminds me so much of the Fallen Too Far. No, it's not Fallen Too Far. It's, the After series by Amanda Todd. And guys, I don't know if you know this about me, but I do not like the After series by Amanda Todd at all. I love the movie series. Don't get me wrong there. I am a definite fangirl of the movie series, but the book series I just do not like because I just felt like the romance there was very toxic, and I felt like while the book series was set in a college environment, the characters acted like they were literally in high school or even middle school. Like, it was just so annoying in my opinion, and this book reminds me so much of that series. It has characters that are supposed to be in their 20s that act like they're actually like 14 or 15, and then the romance here was just just kind of toxic, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. But I will say, if you like Amanda Todd's After series, then you should definitely check this book series out because it definitely reminds me of that series. And it also, I do have to say, the one redemptive quality of this book is that the author also has a very lyrical way of writing. Like, I think that her book was written very beautifully, but I just felt like the characters were very ugly. So that is why I'm getting rid of this book. The next book that I'm getting rid of is Finding Olivia by Michaela Smeltzer. So guys, I actually read another book by this author that I freaking loved. I think it's called Dandelion. I can't really remember, but honestly guys, I loved that book. So right after reading that, I got on to Amazon to look at the author's back catalog, and I ended up finding this book. I thought it was going to be really, really fun. I read it, and honestly guys, I finished it, so it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't good. So that is why I'm getting rid of it. So yeah, it just was not, it just didn't hit me in the same way that Dandelion hit me. Like, I don't know, that magic that was in that book was not found in this book. So yeah, that's why I'm letting it go. Alright, the next book I'm going to be talking about is Crow's Row by Julie Hockley. Yeah, it's Hockley. I forgot her last name for a second. But anyways, this book is a mafia type of book, I believe. It's about like gang ties and a romance, and this girl gets kidnapped by this boy that happens to be like the leader of a gang, and she ends up like, I guess, falling in love with him from there. And guys, this book was just so basic to me. I just did not like this book, and it was hard for me to finish this book. I had a hard time reading it, and it actually kind of gave me a bit of a reading slump. So that is why I'm getting rid of this book. The next book that I'm going to be getting rid of is actually something that's very bittersweet to me, and that is Gabriels Inferno by Sylvain Renard. So this is a book that I read it a very long time ago. I read it like 4 years ago, and I absolutely loved it the first time around, and so I decided to actually reread it again. And whenever I reread it, this book, the second time around, just completely gave me a different feeling, and those feelings were not good. I just did not like this book after I read it the second time, and it was so weird because I literally loved this book the first time I read it, but you know, I just feel like it really shows that my taste has evolved over time. And guys, I just felt like this book was so insta-romancy. Like, the romance here, it was just instant. It was instant. And I felt like there was no reason for it to be instant, because this book, the romance that is being like that is flourishing in this book, it is very toxic, and the love interest is just very rude to our main female character, and I do not like that at all. So yeah, I just had a hard time reading this book the second time around, and that is why I'm getting rid of this book. And it kind of hurts my heart that I'm getting rid of this, but honestly guys, I just feel like this book needs to go, and I think that somebody out there will love this book just as much as I did the first time I read it. So yeah, that is Gabriels Inferno by Sylvain Renard. Bye. Alright. The next book on this list is actually very controversial. Not controversial, but it's controversial in the way where so many people love this author and love all of her books, but I just do not connect well with them, and it's kind of annoying because so many people love this author and her series that she creates, but I'm just not one of those people, and that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. So I have heard so many fantastic things about Penelope Douglas. You cannot throw a rock on BookTube without it landing on a video about Penelope Douglas. And you know, so many people love her writing, and I have given this author multiple chances. I've read this book. I didn't really like it that much, and you know, it wasn't really bad, but it wasn't really good as well. And I just did not really like this book, and there's just something about the way that this author writes that just does not connect well with me. And you know, I've given this author multiple chances, but every time I've read her books, I went in there thinking that I was going to be completely mind blown, and I was just bored while reading both of those books. So yeah, that is why I'm getting rid of Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I definitely think that this book is something that somebody else will love so much and will be so appreciative whenever they see it at the half price books. So yeah, that's Birthday Girl, and that's why it's going. Alright guys, The next book I'm going to be talking about is another darker romance, and that is The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Lori. So this is actually a book that I read and that I kind of enjoyed it. Like, I finished it, and there was moments where it was very, very lighthearted, and I think that's what I liked most about this book, because it's a very, very dark romance, but at the same time it had those moments of lightness that just added a bit of twinkle to this book. And yeah, but guys, honestly, all in all, while I finished this book and while it did give me moments of happiness, I just overwhelmingly, at the end of the day, it didn't mean that much to me. It's not very memorable, so that is why I'm going to be getting rid of it. I just feel like somebody will love this so much more than I did. So yeah, that is The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Lori. Alright guys, so we are moving on to a bit of the lighter romance in this list, and the first book I'm going to be talking about to you is Crosstalk by Connie Willis. So guys, this is actually supposed to be like a rom-com satire, and it is actually a bit of a paranormal romance as well, and I think this is about these people who, once you fall in love with somebody, you can decide to go and get kind of linked up. And when I say linked up, I mean like they can go to this place where they can program them to be able to communicate with the person that you're married to or your significant other from anywhere across the world. So let's say like I'm here sitting in my room in Texas. Well, if I had a sweetheart or somebody that I really liked who I got programmed with and he's off in Switzerland, I could freaking communicate with him telepathically across this world. And you know, that sounds really, really cool, right? And so this girl decides to do that with her boyfriend or her husband. I'm not sure if they're married or what. I don't know. But anyways, it goes wrong whenever she gets connected to a complete stranger, and she ends up starting to fall in love with this guy as they start to talk and communicate with each other telepathically. So this book, like, it's such a beautiful cover and it sounds like so much fun. But I have had this book on my shelf for so many years and I have not read this book, and I just keep on putting it off. And guys, honestly, I just don't think I'm gonna read it. And if I do decide to read this, which I may read this, you know, and I feel like if I do, it will be on audio. So that is why I'm gonna be getting rid of Crosstalk by Connie Willis. The next book I'm going to be talking about is a adult contemporary romance, and that is Fight or Flight by Samantha Young. So honestly guys, I can't really tell you what this book is about. I think these people meet on an airplane and they end up forming a romance from there, but it's definitely an enemies to romance. So I read this book like a couple years ago, and honestly guys, I just did not like this book. It just did not connect well with me. I didn't really like the romance in this story. I just felt like the characters were very like blah. Like that is all I can say about them. They're blah. So guys, as you can tell, this book is just too blah to be keeping on my shelf. So that's why I'm going to be getting rid of it. So yeah, that's Fight or Flight by Samantha Young. Alright guys, the next book I'm going to be talking about is Love Story by Jennifer Eccles, excuse me. So I got this book like so long ago. I was probably like 15 or 14, and I really, really liked it the first time I read it. But guys, ever since then, I just have not picked it up and read it since. And I just feel like it's time to send this out into the world and to Half Price Books and to have somebody else pick this book up and love it just as much as I did. So yeah, that's Love Story by Jennifer Eccles. Alright, the next book I'm going to be talking about is called Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi, or Cho. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. But anyways, guys, this is a book where it is a YA romance, and this is about a girl who ends up getting this person's number by accident, I believe, and they end up just starting to talk over time. You know, they are each other's emergency contact, and yeah, they just end up starting to like each other and falling in love with each other. And guys, this is honestly a book that I picked up and I started to read, and I just did not like the characters at all. I just felt like they were very, very petty, and you could tell that this was a high school romance because the girl definitely acted like she was in high school. So yeah, that I just don't ever see myself really reading this book or finishing it. So yeah, that's why I'm getting rid of Emergency Contact. The next book I'm going to be talking about is called Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. So this is a book where so many people have said so many things about this book. They absolutely loved it, and it is a favorite to so many people. And so whenever I got this book, first of all, it's freaking gorgeous, and I just love like the cover art and everything. Like, this book is gorgeous. It's a work of art. But guys, I read this thinking that I was going to love it, and I just did not connect with this book at all. It was just boring to me, and I felt like the characters were very boring as well. So that is why I'm getting rid of this book. Alright guys, the next book I'm going to be talking about is I O U by Christy Marie. So this is supposed to be like a college romance, comedy romance, and guys, honestly, I just did not like this book. I thought it would be fun to pick this up and to just, you know, have a very lighthearted read, but guys, this book was so boring and the characters were just very, very one-dimensional. I just did not vibe well with this book, and that is why I'm getting rid of it, because there's definitely nothing in me that wants to keep it. So yeah, bye-bye. Alright, next book I'm going to be talking about is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. So I actually have a really cute story about how I ended up getting this book. So I was riding my bike around my neighborhood like a few months ago, and this was actually a book that I had previously talked about in one of my videos. I talked about it in one of my Christmas videos, I think, or it was like in a TBR, and it was around Christmas time, and I was saying that I just wanted to read this book for Christmas, and I ended up not reading it. But by some crazy chance, I was riding my bike in my neighborhood, and one of the people in my neighborhood, they put a little library thing outside of their house. You know, it's one of those libraries where you pick up a book and then you exchange a book, one of your books. And yeah, I just thought that was really cool, and so I went to check out like what books they had, and I saw this book there, and I honestly thought that it was like fate or something. Like, God freaking wanted me to read this book. So I got it. I pedaled back to my house and I got one of my books and I exchanged it and I got this one. And guys, honestly though, ever since then, I've just had it on my shelf and I have not read it, and I just feel like I am just not really gonna read it. I don't know. I don't know. There's just it sounds really good. It sounds really fun, and honestly guys, I just feel like if I do end up reading this book, it's going to be as an audiobook, so that's why I'm going to be getting rid of this one. But it does look really good, and I think like next time around, next Christmas, I may actually read it, you know? So yeah, I just think I'm going to read it as an audiobook. So that is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. Alright guys, let's see, what am I going to talk about next? Alright, let's do this one. The next book I'm going to be talking about is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. So this is a paranormal, like, college romance, and it is actually a retelling of the Persephone and Hades story. And guys, whenever I read this, I thought I was going to love it. It sounded freaking fantastic. And actually the very beginning, like whenever I was reading it, it sounded really cool. And I was actually like really vibing with it. I thought I was going to really like it. But then as I started to read it like more and more, I just realized that there was like no depth to any of the characters, and the romance was very, very toxic, and I just felt like our main girl, she started to find herself falling in love with Hades, but at the same time, I just did not understand the romance because she did not like Hades, and yet she loved him, and that just does not make any sense to me. So I just did not like this romance at all, and that is why I'm going to be getting rid of this one. So yeah, that's A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. The next book I'm going to be getting rid of is The Visitors by Catherine Burns. So this is a mystery book, I believe. Yeah, no, I know, this is a mystery book, and I got this book, like, about a couple years ago, whenever I was trying to get myself to broaden my genres, and because I'm somebody who y'all all know I love myself some smutty romance. Like, that is just what I love. I love paranormal romance, but you know what, I wanted to try to broaden my horizons and get out of my comfort zone, so I decided to get this book. And guys, I have just had this book sitting on my shelf and I have not read it, like, at all, and I just feel like this book deserves to be in somebody else's hands, and it deserves to be with somebody who loves mystery books, because I feel like they will love this one. Honestly, guys, it sounds interesting, but it's just not the type of genre that I like, and I just don't find myself going and really expanding myself and reading that genre anytime soon. So yeah, that's The Visitors by Catherine Burns. Alright, so the next book I'm going to be talking about is another contemporary romance, and that is We Met in December by Rosie Curtis. So this is basically as you can tell, like a Christmas book, and I think it's about like these two people who meet. They are actually roommates in a house, and they end up meeting, and I think our main girl likes the guy, but he has a girlfriend, and I just think, like, over time they start going from friends to lovers. And yeah, guys, honestly though, like, I picked this book up, I started to read it, and I just did not find myself, like, really liking this book. I just didn't have much interest in it, so I just put it down and I never finished it, and I don't find myself thinking that I will ever finish this book or pick it up again, so that is why I'm getting rid of it. So yeah. Alright, the next book we're going to be talking about is Queen Heir by Jamin Eve and Leah Stone. So Jamin Eve, on her own, I love her book series. I think that she is a great author, but whenever these two authors come together, you know, I've read multiple books by these two authors, and I just do not really like their writing that well. I like them both on their own, but just not together, if that makes any sense. I don't know, but guys, honestly, this book sounds really fun. It's about werewolves, and it's about like a competition that's going on. It's an indie romance, so if you like anything like that, you would probably like this book. But honestly, guys, I just didn't really like what they were doing with the werewolves in this story, and I just felt like it had a very slow start, and so I started to read this book, but I never finished it, and I don't think I ever will pick it up again, so that is why I am also getting rid of this one. Okay, the next book I'm going to be talking about is Would-Be Witch by Kimberly Frost. So this is a book that kind of reminds me of like the True Blood series. You know, this girl, she's just a witch living in like a southern small town, and I think something happened. Like, somebody stole her necklace, and she's trying to find out who the perpetrator is. And so guys, this is just a very light-hearted, like, chick lit type of paranormal book series. And guys, honestly, like, I got this book because I wanted to try to start reading more chick lit paranormal romance, but honestly, this book just did not really hit the mark with me. Like, I read the whole book, but this is just definitely not a book that I will ever really find myself reading again. So yeah, that is why I'm getting rid of this one. Alright. The next book I'm going to be talking about to you that I'm getting rid of is is the complete series of Jill Kismet, and this is by Lilith St. Crow. So as you can tell, I got this book from Half Price Books, and it's an urban fantasy book, but guys, I have just never read this book, and I just don't think I ever will read it. But you know, it sounds really fun, it sounds really interesting, it just sounds like another like Buffy the Vampire Slayer type of book, and I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I just don't think I'm ever gonna read this book, you know, so that's why I'm going to be sending it back to Half Price Books. Alright guys, we are now moving on to the next book, and that is The Iron Daughter, I cannot talk. That is The Iron Daughter by Julie Kagawa. So this book, I actually really love this series. This is a YA series about fairies, and it's basically about this girl. She ends up like losing her brother, and he goes missing, and she finds out that he's in the fairy world, and she's like currently in the human world. She grew up in the human world, but she ends up going to the fairy world to try to get her brother back. And while she goes to the fairy world, she finds out that she's like some like missing fairy princess, and so yeah, things happen from there, and she ends up like falling in love with like an enemy prince or something like that. I don't know, but this is a really good series. I really loved it, and I still love it, but I just don't think I'm going to be reading this book again anytime soon. And yeah, I feel like if I do read this, it will definitely be on audio, so that is why I'm getting rid of this book. And yeah, bye baby. Alright, next book on the series is a contemporary adult book, and that is 10 Tiny Breaths by K.A. Tucker. So guys, before I read this book, I heard so many wonderful and fantastic things about this series, and I thought I was going to really love it, but I just did not like it. And I felt like the romance in this book, because obviously this is a primarily romance-based book, I thought it was going to be really good, but it was just like really slow moving. But at the same time, there was a lot of insta romance in this series, and I did not like that, obviously, because I don't like insta romance. I love a good slow burn, and I just feel like the characters in this book were just not fun to read about. They're just kind of lackluster characters, and I did not find myself wanting to finish this book. I got like halfway, never completed it, and I'm never going to pick this book up again. So yeah, bye-bye. The next book I'm going to be talking about is Falling In by Lydia Michaels. So this is basically like a 50 Shades of Grey type of book. You know, this was written right after 50 Shades of Grey was like all the rage, and I decided to pick up this book because I thought that I would like it because I liked 50 Shades of Grey, but this book was basically just a huge ripoff of 50 Shades of Grey, and it was just not good. The romance in this series was very toxic, and the main male like character, he was just so annoying. I hated him. He was so rude, and I just there was no redemptive qualities to him whatsoever. So yeah, that is why I'm getting rid of this book, because I didn't like it. I didn't like the romance. So yeah, bye-bye. Okay, the next book I'm going to be talking about is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. So obviously, if you haven't heard of John Green, I'm sure you have, but he writes like YA types of books. He wrote The Fault in Our Stars, and while I've never read The Fault in Our Stars, I watched the movie. I absolutely loved it. It was so good. I freaking cried my butt off. Like, there were some big tears falling from my face whenever I was watching that movie. But guys, I have just never read any of John Green's books, but I've heard so many incredible things about them. You know, so many people like them. So I thought that I would give this man a chance and read one of his books. So I picked this book up, and guys, I just did not really like this book. I just could not find myself connecting to the main character or to the romance. I thought that the romance was very just two-dimensional. I feel like there could have been so much more to this romance, so much more of a build-up, but I just feel like the author, instead of taking the time to build up the romance between the two main characters, he was taking the time to talk so much more about our main character and the mental difficulties that she was going through. And while I feel like that's something really important to talk about, I am just somebody who, I am all here for the romance. And I felt like the romance was just very much part of the subplot, and it just got lost as the main character was dealing with the difficulties that were going on in her life and within herself. So that is why I just didn't really like this book, and I am going to be getting rid of it. Alright guys, the next book that we're going to be talking about is Awakens by Elise Kova. So this is basically like, what's it called? So this is like a indie fantasy romance type of book. I really thought I was going to like this because this is about a girl who, she's like a librarian and she's just living a very, very mundane yet fun life that she absolutely loves, and she ends up finding out that like she has these magical powers, and she ends up going to this school to be a type of sorcerer's apprentice, I think, and it's here that she meets like the prince of this kingdom that she's living in, and they end up having like a hate to love romance. And guys, I thought that I was going to eat this stuff up. It sounded so good, but then I actually read it and I hated this romance. I hated it. I hated the main guy. He was just so rude to our main girl. He was so rude. And while he was being so rude to her, she was basically like, oh, I love him. He's so amazing. And oh, he just acts like this to me because he's had such a hard childhood. Like, no. I hated how she was trying to make excuses for him. I hated how this was such a big Insta romance. There was just nothing redeemable about this man, and yet she was finding herself loving him. Like, ugh, like, gag. No way. I did not like this book at all, and that is why I'm going to be getting rid of this book. I'm going to be getting rid of it, and honestly, I'm so excited to be getting rid of it, guys, because I just did not like this book. Okay. So yeah, bye-bye. Alright, guys, next book I'm going to be talking about here. Let me just get some of the books that I'm going to be talking about. Okay. So the next book I'm going to be talking about that I'm getting rid of is The Harlot by Saskia Walker. So this is basically like a witchy erotica type of book, and I knew this was going to be a big time erotica going into it, but you know, I thought that I was going to like it at the same time. But guys, whenever I read this book, I just felt like the romance was just so forced in this book. You know, there was barely any time spent on the main two characters talking to each other, and instead they were just pulling down their pants and having sex like anywhere and everywhere, and it was just very annoying. You know, I'm somebody who, I'm all here for the romance. I love a slow burn, and I just want the romance to be something that is built, and I just felt like that was so lost amongst all the smutty sex that was going on, and I just did not like that. I didn't like it. Like, don't get me wrong, I like eroticas, but I like an erotica where the author actually spends time developing the romance as well as the sexual encounters and sexual scenes. So yeah, this book is going away. Okay. Alright, the next book I'm going to be talking about is The Mask of the Red Death by Bethany Griffin. So this is a book set in like a post-apocalyptic world, and it's where like all these people, like there's like a plague going on, and I think this girl has survived the plague, and there are other people that have survived it, and they're basically just living life for as long as they can before the plague reclaims them and they die. I think that's what it's about. But honestly, guys, I have had this book for like 3 years or 2 years, but I have not read it. And you know, it sounds really good. It sounds really interesting, especially because, you know, we are going through our own type of like plague sort of with the coronavirus. So this actually sounds like a really good book to read. But honestly, guys, I have just had it for so long, and while it does sound like a really good book, I just have not read it yet, and so I feel like I just need to give this book away, and if I do decide to come back to it and read it, then it will definitely be in the form of an audiobook. So yeah, that is why I'm getting rid of this book. The next book I'm going to be talking about is Drink Deep by Chloe Neal, and this is part of the Chicagoland Vampires series. So guys, this is actually, I think, like the 3rd book or the 4th book in the series, and I just have to tell you, like, I absolutely love this series so much. It is an urban fantasy series, and it just literally, it's one of my favorite like urban fantasy books I've ever read. I have not actually finished the series because the series is so long. There's like 13 books in it or something, and I have not committed myself enough to it to where I've read it all. But guys, I still loved it so much. You know, it has vampires, it has a good enemies to lovers type of romance, and our girl is freaking awesome. She's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer on steroids. She is amazing. And guys, the reason why I'm getting rid of this book though is because this is the 4th book out of like 12 books, and I just don't find myself taking the time to collect all the books in this series, and yeah, that is why I'm getting rid of this book, but it is still a book that I really, really love. It is so fun, and I definitely recommend this book to anybody that loves urban fantasy, or maybe you want to start getting more into urban fantasy. This is definitely a good book series to start out with. So yeah, that is Drink Deep by Chloe Neal. The next book I'm going to be getting rid of is Mystic by Jason Denzel. So this is a book that it is definitely a fantasy series, and you know, whenever I picked this book up, I thought that maybe there will be a bit of a romance going on, but after I got it, I looked at the reviews on Goodreads, and there was just like nobody was talking about any type of romance like whatsoever. Like if there is a romance going on, it's very, very much like in the subplot, and guys, that is just something where I did not find myself wanting to read this book like after finding out that there's barely any romance. But, you know, the book still does sound good. It sounds really good. But I am just somebody I'm a romance snob. I love romance. I want romance, and if it's not there, then I'm not interested in the series. So, yeah, that is why I'm getting rid of this book. The next book on my list is Furious Rush by S.C. Stevens. So this is actually an author who, like, I have read a series by her that I freaking loved. It was phenomenal. It was a new adult, like college type of romance series, and I freaking loved it. I ate it up. So after reading that, I looked at the author's back catalog, and I ended up finding this book. And you know, it's basically about this girl who she rides like motorcycles, and she competes in motorcycle competitions, and she ends up having a secret type of forbidden romance with a man who is on her competitor's motorcycle team. And it's basically like a Romeo and Juliet type of story, except with motorcycles in it. So I thought that this book was going to be freaking awesome. I thought it was going to be a furious rush, but you know, I read it and I just did not like it. I thought the romance was very subpar to the other series that I've read by her, and yeah, guys, I just did not connect with this series. I didn't connect with this book. I just didn't really like it. So yeah, that's why I'm getting rid of this one. So one of the last books I'm going to be talking to you guys about is Wicked by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So this was a book that I picked up after reading so many other books by Jennifer L. Armentrout. You know, I just love her writing. I think that her writing is so incredible, and every book that she writes is so amazing. So whenever I got this book, you know, I thought that I was going to love it so much, especially because it is set in New Orleans, and there are also fairies in this book. And guys, I don't know if you know this about me yet. If you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I love fairies, and I haven't really mentioned this all too much, but I also love New Orleans. So I thought that I was going to love this book. I thought it was such a great combination, right? And well, anyways, I read it, and guys, it just kind of fell flat for me. I honestly, I finished the book, but just barely. There were so many times I wanted to give up on this book because the romance just was not good for me whatsoever, and I felt like the characters were very flat, the relationship was very flat, and the plot line was also very, very flat. Like, I don't know what happened, but Jennifer L. Armentrout's like magic that is usually found in every one of her books was just lost in this one, so that is why I'm going to be giving this one up for adoption. So yeah, that's why I'm getting rid of this book. Guys, we have made it to the end of this video. Oh my goodness, this was such a big and long video, guys. If you have made it to the very end, then you are troopers and you are absolutely amazing. Guys, I love y'all all so much. Please make sure to like and subscribe because I post new videos every week, and I would love to have you join my little side of BookTube. So yeah, you guys, comment down below if any of these books that I talked about are books that you happen to like. Are they your favorites? I would love to know. And anyways, yeah, guys, I love y'all so much, and I hope y'all have a fantastic, marvelous day. Mwah! I'll see you next time, okay? Bye!